This is Sports 225 with Lee Feinswag. Sports 225 with Lee Feinswag is Baton Rouge's longest running and best television show. Who would have believed that?
My best friend, Lee Feinswag, look at the Christmas.
Sports 225 is brought to you by Breck. Remember, it all starts at Breck. Now, your host, Lee Feinswag.
Let's go. Fade, the music will come. So I got to tell you, the other night I was listening to a radio show. I heard my friend Tim Brando going on about something. As soon as the radio interview ended, I called him because I wanted to give him grief, which I've been doing ever since we met each other in like 1984 or 85. You remain the best humored good guy. And I said, man, we're talking about a bunch of stuff. And I said, I sure wish I could get you to come on the show. When's the next time you're going to be in Baton Rouge? And he said, just a few days.
Yeah.
And here you are.
You know, I think I was talking about old writers, friends of mine. You just weren't old enough, see? I went Sam King. I went way back.
I'm old.
Yeah, but you're not as old as Sam.
Yeah.
You're not as old as a lot of the old guys. I go back far, far, far.
There are a
you
lot
forget 79, 80 is when I first came to Baton Rouge. Now, you and I met in
I came about 5 years later.
You know, like 83, 84, somewhere in there. And but I felt badly when you called because I knew immediately he is going to blister me for not remembering him. Because when it comes to basketball, and I think my point was in the interview was that basketball has always been the redheaded stepchild of sports media in Baton Rouge and South Louisiana. And I said only a few. And I was one of the trumpeters for Dale back in the day.
Course. Well, you can go back.
And I think Sam King and you, and that was about it.
Well, you go back farther. There were people who, after Pete Maravich, and there's always been the books about Maravich and the love for Maravich, but I was the only one for a long time who really carried the torch for college basketball in Baton Rouge. I wrote a book called Hoop Daddy about father, sons, and basketball and was fully ingrained in it back in the day. But for people who are watching this show, and you know, we're on Cox 4 locally and CST regionally, and then on the Sports 225 YouTube channel.
Ooh, I love that.
If you don't know Tim, I mean, he's from Shreveport, and he came to Baton Rouge doing radio, I think, and then caught on with WAFB as a young pup, and was in on the ground floor with ESPN.
And ground floor with Tiger Vision, too.
Oh, of course, which is
That's
a
actually
forerunner to what we're doing here. It went Tiger Vision to TCI, briefly AT&T, and then it became Cox.
Yeah.
And so along the way, Tim left ESPN, was the voice of college football for CBS Sports, and now is with Fox Sports. I'm going to get him to talk a little bit more about all that. But you know, people should know that you were here during a great time of changing media. And then you would go do those ice hockey on roller skates and canoes for ESPN, and then
whatever no one else would do, I'll do that.
Yeah, and
I was like Mikey in the cereal commercial. You know, I don't want to eat it. Let Mikey eat it. If it was something no one else wanted to do, I'd say sure, I'll do it, and that's.
And then you'd hustle your butt back to Baton Rouge and do whatever you had to do here. I mean, you worked some miles.
I'll never forget, and having seen on the day of our conversation, this taping, I was emceeing the LAB Awards for all the radio and television stations in the state. That's what brought me down here. And I ran into countless people from Monroe, where I went to school, from Baton Rouge, New Orleans, where I worked. KTBS in Shreveport is where my daughter works now. It's where my dad had a television show, and I grew up as a kid in a television station when I was 6 years old. So there was nothing else I could do but television in some form. But I ran into all these people, you know, incredible faces and voices from my past. And especially the ones at Channel 9 from over on Government Street. When I saw them, including one old engineer that used to work there, and at the radio station at WIBR for Bob Earl back in the day, it reminded me of Carlton Cremines, the old news director at Channel 9, when I was working at ESPN, and in those days, your local bosses were actually happy for you when you got other opportunities. Instead of saying, no, kid, you can't do that. You need to stay here and do. They were like, oh, Tim, go and do that ball game for Tiger Vision. And gosh, I saw you on a top-ranked boxing show with Al Bernstein. Good, they were happy for you. But once Mr. Cremines, great old news director at Channel 9, came to me, and he said, "Hey, Tim, can you come here a second?" I said, "Yeah, Mr. Cremines, what is it?" He says, "Listen, I know you've got, I used to stack up stories in these old cartridges where we put our TV stories, like if you imagine radio cartridges, TV cartridges, videotape was about this big.
Some.
And when I had to go out of town, I would make sure I had a story for Jay Townsend's 6 o'clock and his 10 o'clock for each one of the days I'd be gone. So I might be gone for 3 days, and there'd be on his desk 6 big, piles of tape. And that meant, at least on the air, you saw me every day.
Right.
But I wasn't in the building. So Mr. Cremines took me into his office one day. He says, "Kid, I'm real happy for you. Everybody in the newsroom's been watching you on that cable thing. What is it?" I said, "ESPN." "Yeah, that." He said, "That's real good." He said, "But just when you get some time, even if you don't have any work to do, just come in and have some coffee and donuts and sit and visit for a bit." He just wanted me to be in the building and kibitz with people, because, guys would be saying, "My God, how..." I was holding down probably, at that time, 3 full-time gigs. I was between the coaches' shows, the LSU play-by-play, the ESPN, and the Channel 9. I was barely home for, to go to bed at night, much less eat with my wife at our first house in Prairieville. But thank God for people like that in those days. I mean, bosses in the 80s actually championed your success. They wanted you to have more opportunity.
Absolutely. All right, he's Tim Brando, the greatest guy to interview in the world, because back when I had that radio show, I used to have him on courtside for basketball, and it was great. I knew all I had to do was ask one question. He has never forgotten where he came from and where he started. It's Sports 225. When we get back, I'll get him laughing with an old Southern University football story.
Great.
I'm Lee Feinswag at Sports 225.
Hi, I'm Joe Martin, president of ITI Technical College. You're not a number here at ITI. You're known by name. The staff and the instructors work diligently for your success, because your success is our success. ITI is family owned and part of this community. Our 10-acre campus has been here for over 40 years. Let us evaluate your credits to determine if they'll transfer here. ITI is accredited by the Accrediting Commission of Career Schools and Colleges. ITI Technical College. Begin your journey for a better life.
We're back on Sports 225, and I remembered before I left to pick up an extra large Sports225.com on the back here T-shirt to give to my man. If you ever venture out in Bossier City or Shreveport,
it's on.
Shea Brando, they call it.
Yeah, as I'm mowing the lawn at Chateau Brando.
There you go. Chateau Brando, that's it.
Brando,
you can follow him at Tim Brando. Of course, he is a national sports I was going to say reporter, but you're all the above. Talking head, play-by-play guy for Fox Sports, and you still do the ACC on Sunday nights, right? Basketball.
Well, it's not so much the Sundays anymore, but it's ACC regional games on Raycom. Fox allowed me to continue to do that. In fact, I did the ACC.
Talk about people who were nice enough to let you keep doing stuff.
Yeah.
So I mentioned about, Tim's always had the best sense of humor. And I mean, really, seriously, one time, that's still one of my favorite lines ever. And you couldn't get away with this unless a guy had a great sense of humor and liked you, where I asked him, well, Tim, don't you realize what the favorite thing in your life is? And he goes, what? And I said, the sound of your own voice. And he was just going. But one time we were at 1985, we're covering Southern football.
Right.
Otis Washington was the coach.
Yep.
We had the weekly news luncheon. And we had set this up with Otis. You think you could do this again now with Nick Saban or anybody?
Probably
Where
not.
we all had penalty flags, and when Tim asked his first question, and as soon as he got past 30 seconds, we stood up, somebody blew a whistle, and we threw penalty flags on Tim. The sports media has changed a little bit.
It has. We were kind of all in this together.
There was a lot of that
back in those days, and I think that our community. Had a lot to do with that. I was talking about those stories I had.
Yeah.
During football season, it was pretty predictable. You had, I believe it was a Monday LSU luncheon, a Tuesday Southern luncheon. So you could predict during football season what
you knew what you were doing every day,
what the regimentation was going to be, and so you would do your best to get all that lined up. And Otis and those guys, and even Jerry Stovall, God bless his heart, he. when he was coaching in the early 80s, and I was working over at WIBR. I mean, our station was out in Port Allen.
Yeah, you were
it was
over
in the
across
middle
the
of
river.
the,
Yeah,
it
the
was
middle
in
of
the
a cow field.
sugarcane
Yeah.
fields. And I convinced these people, coaches at LSU and at Southern, to drive all the way out there to be on it was the only nightly sports talk radio show at the time that Baton Rouge ever had. And Bob Earl, God rest his soul, was the owner, general manager of the place. And I asked him if I could do the show, and he says, well, baby, can you sell it? And I said, yeah, I think I can get some advertisers. And he says, well, if you can sell it, we can put anything on. And I said, good. So we put it on, and I'll never forget when I was trying to get my sportscasting career going. At the time, I was just doing radio, but I knew I wanted to be a sportscaster. I wanted to do high school play-by-play. And I remember Dale Brown telling me, as he was mentoring me, he says, Tim, Dale, you need to see Joe Dean. You need to go by and talk to Joe. He'll be able to help you. So I went in to see him, and Joe says, Dale says great things about you. And I can see you got energy, you got passion. I see it in you. And I said, well, thank you, Mr. Dean. He says, here's what you need to do.
And wait, let me interrupt you by saying, but he wasn't the athletic director at LSU
No,
yet.
he was
This is when he
Converse.
was Converse shoes.
And he was the
doing-
voice of SEC basketball.
Right, string music was his-
String music,
yeah,
working
right.
with John Ferguson
Right,
on the
right.
game of the week
Yeah.
of SEC basketball. And so I'm all ears.
Yeah.
And he says, I see what Dale sees in you. I see the passion. He says, what you need to do, son, is you get your cassette recorder, or you come around LSU, you go over to Southern in North Baton Rouge, and you go over there and you make them know you're relevant. He says, remember, in order to circulate, you got to percolate. Go over there and make sure those coaches know. And so soon I would have, it didn't matter, gymnastics coach, the tennis coach at both schools. I mean, I just went in and hit the ground running at both schools. And Otis was one of my favorite guys.
Oh, God, he was
and
great.
He loved it. And I got through with one of my shows with him one night out in the cotton fields and sugarcane fields of Port Allen. I got through with the show, and he says, Tim, I just love being with you, because if I can't think of anything to say, I know you will. And it was like he was
Yeah.
like timing my questions.
Oh, it was great. And let me say, before we go to break, I went to that studio one time, and I can't remember what the circumstances were, but you literally got on LA1 North in Port Allen.
Yeah.
You went past town, made a left into really what was near a sugarcane field, and there was this little building.
Yeah.
And you walk in, and it was
It's still there, by the way.
Oh, my gosh.
The building. I mean, obviously the building is vacated, and I don't know if asbestos probably took it over, but it's still there. I've driven by that highway before.
Well, it's like Ted Baxter, Mary Tyler Moore show. It all started on a 50-watt radio station outside
Exactly.
Sacramento. He's
Yeah.
Tim Brando. You can follow him at Tim Brando. You can watch him on Fox Sports and doing Raycom broadcasts, and you'll see him back on this show after this next break. I'm Lee Feinswag at Sports 225.
Don't let the bed bugs bite you. We'll put them to sleep.
Bed bugs can be transported from most anywhere. Hotels, department stores, even a friend's house.
We've got the bead on bed bugs. Call the bug man today.
Call 923-BUGS.
That's what I'm telling you. All right, we're back on Sports 225. I've got Tim Brando here in studio who, and I may be wrong about this, but I think I'm right. For as long as we've known each other, and for the 22 years that this has been Sports Monday and then morphed into Sports 225, and of course, you living in Shreveport and traveling as much as
Right.
you have, and me busting your chops.
For never
Is this the
being
first,
here.
Is this the first time?
First time.
Wow, that's amazing.
First time.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe. I mean, I've been on your different radio shows over
All
the
the
years,
time.
and
I want to say I was actually on, there was a late night show years ago that Pat Shingleton did on WBRZ. I don't know, some sort of late night local version of, what Pat always wanted to be, a stand-up comic. And the late Gus Piazza, God rest his soul, was on the set with Pat and I. And you were busting my chops about being on that show. I was still working at ESPN at that time. You were busting my chops about being on
think
that
about
show.
how long
not
you've
being
been
on you.
how long you've been
Years.
gone from ESPN. I mean, what?
94.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
23 years. There's a whole generation
Yeah.
that doesn't even know I worked at ESPN or that I was the original host of College Game Day.
Well, just there's a whole generation of people out there and have no idea that I knew something about basketball back in the day. So you still follow and have strong opinions about LSU.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
And people, you can't get away from it. People
Right.
are going to ask you regardless.
And,
Yeah.
and LSU, you could argue, is coming off one of its more dismal school years. I mean, the debacle that was 1.5 years ago leading into the end of the football season, followed by all that transpired last year. And then, of course, having to fire a basketball coach. And the women's basketball team we thought going into the season was in a tenuous situation, but it's finished up real nice. The gymnastics team is great, but I love Dee Dee and I love her program, but I don't think a school in the SEC wants to hang its hat on just its gymnastics program.
No.
And now this week, our timing is great that LSU has hired Will Wade as its next basketball coach from VCU. So any thoughts you have in general about LSU and, of course, that hire? I'd love to hear.
Well, I'm a big fan of his. I think I came in contact with him very early in his career when he was a GA, and the job that he did at VCU was remarkable, stepping into the size 22s left by Shaka Smart. Made a significant run in the tournament last year, not so much this year, but still very successful. But I don't know that he could ever possibly be ready for the fishbowl he's about to get into. I've not talked to him. I'll probably see him at the Final Four because I do some work for the NABC at the Coaches Convention, so I'm sure I'll see him then, get a chance to visit. And it's not that I wish him anything but success. I want him to be successful, but you know, the seeds are not sown for success at all on the campus in Baton Rouge for basketball, and for a lot of different reasons, mostly above the coaching profession and in the administrative area. The facilities are, you know, low tier by SEC or Division I basketball standards. I don't know that, and I always rankle a lot of LSU fans when I say it, but it's true. The apathy for the sport itself has reached an awful low, below where it was even post John Brady. And oh, by the way, I'll remind people, when John Brady left shortly after a Final Four, that Final Four season they had one sellout, in the 2006 season, with 4 Baton Rouge kids starting and 5 Baton Rouge kids playing. So basketball in our area, in this part of Louisiana, has got its issues even before you're mismanaged by your administration. And they are completely mismanaged in the LSU athletic department right now. The football program, fortunately, because of the incredible mass of talent that surrounds the 100-mile area, and a circumference around Baton Rouge proper, is the reason why it's been able to overcome the mismanagement of that athletic department. And to take it to a higher level, F. King Alexander, the president of the university, the chancellor, he couldn't even come to terms with the fact that most of the native Louisianians would know that the coach is not being paid by taxpayers, so that he had to, quote, play a political game and rescind an offer to a great coach that cost him an opportunity to get the coach that they wanted for football 2 years ago. So you've got governance issues at LSU in athletics, and for that matter, even at a higher level. So I you know, you just can't, and it's always been that way at LSU. Very rarely have they ever had a situation where the chancellor, athletic director, and head coaches of football and basketball were in lockstep. Almost always,
you know,
there's been an ego problem.
No doubt. Yeah.
Always been an ego problem.
All right, well, let me just say this about Will Wade, the basketball coach. Somebody asked me, do I like the hire? I said, I don't dislike the hire. I like his energy. I like his success rate.
Right.
There are 2 things that concern me. One, I don't know if he can build or sustain a program. He has a major rebuilding job to go here. He's not inheriting a good situation.
We don't know, based on what happened at VCU, if he can do that. We don't.
Right, exactly. And we don't know if he can handle failure because he hasn't had to deal with that. The other is the last 3 coaches at VCU. Jeff Capel went to Oklahoma and is now an assistant coach at Duke. Anthony Grant, who did so well, went to
now he's with Billy at
Alabama,
Oklahoma City.
assistant coach at
Oak City.
Yeah, Oklahoma City, and Shaka Smart, who went to Texas, had the worst year of his career this year.
Yeah.
And now that may not, just because of that doesn't mean this. A plus B equals C, but whatever. Hoop that. He's Tim Brando. I'm Lee Feinswag. We got to take this final break, and we'll be right back.
See that dog lover? About to unleash the terror hound on these friendly, unsuspecting canines? Well, I'm the human dislike button, and I see it too. Easy there, Cujo. Taking part in a dog socialization program at a shelter or pet store can help nip this problem in the bud. And no matter how well socialized your pet is, cleaning up the little rays of sunshine they leave in their merry wake is your responsibility. To learn more about me, go to breck.org/HDB.
All right, we're coming down the home stretch of another Sports 225. Thanks to John and Corey from JCW for directing the show, and to, of course, Tim Brando being here and delaying his return to Shreveport, Louisiana, after a day in Baton Rouge. You can watch the show on Cox 4, CST, the Sports 225 YouTube channel, all available at sports225.com. And it's pretty
You
good.
got this down pretty quickly.
Well, I always, and
You're
you know
a
what?
fast talker for a writer.
There you go. And what I
pretty good.
learned in the way back when, do this at the beginning of the last
There you
segment,
go.
so you don't have to worry about that. What you got going in the near future besides going to the Final Four?
Really
got a
recharging the battery
little
now.
downtime right now.
I just re-upped with Fox for the next 4 years.
Their football games are fun. You could do the
So,
Pac-12 among others, right?
Pac-12, next year we pick up the Big Ten
Nice.
to go along with the Pac-12 and the Big 12. So it's really fun with what's going on at, for instance, FS1, the cable outlet for Fox Sports. They're 3 years old now. They've had some bumps along the way, but from an inventory standpoint, they're getting this and they're getting that, and there's an energy and enthusiasm. We all know who the 900-pound gorilla of the industry is. There's no doubt about that. But my old friends in Bristol have fallen on some hard times, and suddenly where we are is kind of where everybody in the industry would like to be.
Yes.
And so I feel like I'm a little bit ahead of the curve there.
No, I don't
And the
disagree with you
people-
at all, because ESPN has become an almost unwatchable network, except
Yeah.
for the broadcast of sporting events.
Yeah. Without the live events, you can't build a network without live events. And I was fortunate to be at ESPN when it was still sort of in the incubator, so to speak, coming out. We only had about 20 million homes.
Who's
when
going to
I
play
left
you in the
there.
movie?
Good. That's
There is going to be a movie.
there will be a movie. I don't know.
They
They'll
s-
probably, as is the case with most books, they sort of forget the 80s when they actually made it, and they fast forward to Oberman and Patrick, and that's really where they start, which is unfortunate. But I such great friends and people there that I care so deeply about, and they're about to take another hit there. But to our point with Fox, I sort of feel like I did when I was 29 years old working at ESPN. And I'm 61 now, working at a burgeoning cable network,
Yeah.
and then getting to do these really big games in the Big East and in the Big Ten next year, in the Pac-12 and the Big 12 on Big Fox. And, Spencer Tillman and I did Bedlam together. That's the other great thing. Great example. I leave CBS. A year after I leave, Spencer leaves CBS, and Joel Klatt is going to go to work for Gus Johnson. And my bosses call me and they say, "Hey, Tim, Joel's going to go work with Gus. Do you have anybody you'd like to recommend?" And I said, "What?" 35 years in this business nationally, no boss has ever asked me my opinion on who
All
to
right,
work with.
I got to kick
and
you out
they
of here.
hired Spencer.
You got to go.
So, excited
we
about
got to
it.
go. He's
Enjoyed
Tim
it.
Brando. Thank you so much. I'll see you back here in 22 more years.
You got it, Lee. I'll be here.
Thanks for watching. We got to get out of here.
All right. Thanks.
At carnival time by Baton Rouge Bay, that's the site of my story. At Spanish Town Mardi Gras, things can get blurry. See the mowers marching, prizes fill the sky. This Spanish Town Mardi Gras, may it never die. Poetry was everywhere, sweet music